1, 2, 3, 4. Monster movie.
Fun time, go! Monster movie.
Fun time, go. Monster
Movie.
Fun time.
Go!
Monster movie. Fun time, go.
With Precious D and Honeybee.
Fun time, go!
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show. I am your host, Precious D.
And I am your host, Honeybee.
Honeybee, we have some breaking kaiju news today.
Ooh, hit me with it.
The interwebs is reporting that the next movie in the Legendary Films Monsterverse series has a working title of Son of Kong.
What?
Yeah.
Son of Kong. Brr, 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 brr.
And I am curious to know if he will have albinism like the original Son of Kong did.
And if he'll do the weird finger thing.
Cut his finger. Now, some people are taking this to mean that we won't be seeing Godzilla in the next one. I believe Legendary had a 3-movie deal with Toho, and I don't know that they've extended it. And I've seen some things on the internet saying Toho wants to make some more Godzilla movies themselves. So, don't know if that means that's it for Godzilla in the Monsterverse, but I hope not.
Surely not. I don't think so.
I mean, I guess it just comes down to what kind of deal they've made. Now, the last time Toho made a Godzilla movie was in 2016 with Shin Godzilla, but that was concurrent with the Monsterverse because I think the American Godzilla was 2014. So they can still do their own thing at the same time if they care to. But that's the kaiju news. Also, I wanted to give a shout out to a couple of our listeners.
Ooh, shout out.
They're not patrons because we don't have a Patreon yet. I just want to give a quick shout out to Armando Hernandez Jr. Hi, Junior. And
Hi.
Another old friend who's a big fan of the show, Lubasha Malenkovic. Thanks for listening,
Shout
guys.
Thanks for listening.
Honeybee, today we're talking about King Kong versus Godzilla.
Yes, we're here. This is why we're here. We're in it. This is the meat. I remember when you first brought this idea to me, and it was all based around this idea. This was all I knew at the time of Godzilla and King Kong, but not even, of course, this version, because it was like a new version that was coming out or whatever.
Right. Mm-hmm.
I'm so excited for this episode, you guys. I am so excited to be here. We've made it. I feel like we've made it. We finally made it to the good stuff, right?
Yeah.
We did our time. We got through the 30s, the fucking 50s, and here we are, King Kong versus Godzilla. So happy to be here. Let's do it.
This is one of the King Kong and Godzilla movies that I saw as a kid on TV.
On TV?
Yeah.
Nice.
For a long time, the only way most Americans could see a Godzilla movie was on television. They did not all get theatrical releases. Some of them did. Now, this one, I believe, got a theatrical release when it first came out in 1962, but I wasn't born until 1968. A lot of this stuff went straight to TV or got replayed on TV over and over again once it had initial release. Of course, in those days, there was no home video, so the way you'd see most movies was on some Saturday afternoon TV show.
But this wasn't released in America anyway, right? Or the American version was released a year later, was it?
I believe so. So that was the version that I saw, was the American version. You couldn't see the Japanese version in America for years until it was released on the first Blu-ray I have was the American version. I think it's the Criterion big collection it's like a $200 set, although you can get it for less than that on Amazon.
Oh.
It's a big Blu-ray set of all of the Showa era movies, Godzilla movies.
That's cool.
And it includes both the Japanese version and the American version. But then I have a separate Blu-ray that was just the American version. So yeah, I'm pretty sure
Nice.
the only way to see the Japanese version up until now was that set, which just came out a few years ago. And
Wow. I feel so lucky to be able to watch the Japanese version first of
yeah,
everything, really, because
yeah,
it's always the elite version, in my
yes,
opinion.
a lot of these movies they were not available in the original version here until the past 10 years or so when they started releasing
Dang.
special edition DVDs. I have a bunch of DVDs and Blu-rays that have both versions on it, but now some of them it's hard to find the American version if you want to watch it. Like HBO Max has a whole bunch of these movies on there, but they're all the Japanese version. And if you don't feel like
Yeah.
reading subtitles, you are out of luck. And most of these were distributed in the US by our buddies American International Pictures. So they would often do a lot of edits and they would dub them. And in this movie they did some pretty heavy edits.
Oh yeah, they did.
Did you get to watch the American version at all?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Folks, we're not going to do a whole separate episode on that, but we'll just briefly sort of go over what the changes are. There's a good YouTube video that goes in great detail of what all the changes are, and I'll try to find that and put it in the show notes.
Oh,
But basically, they filmed a framing sequence with a United Nations newscaster, which is not a thing. And he's an American guy, and he has a few guests come on his show. And so they intercut this guy who is Michael Keith playing Eric Carter, UN reporter. And he's just in this shitty little studio, never leaves it. And they just cut it. So they don't even bother trying to insert him in the scenes like they did with Raymond Burr.
yeah.
He is just in a separate location.
Yeah, at least the last guy, he was like right in the middle of shit. They made it
Yeah.
look like he was in the middle of shit. This guy, they're just like, sit here at this desk, talk to people on the phone.
And I think they did a pretty good job of making Raymond Burr look like he was actually there. But yeah,
Oh, totally.
they don't bother with this guy. And they cut a lot of the backstory and comedy and just character and interaction.
The worst part. The worst part was they cut like all the comedy.
Yeah.
This movie is so funny. There's so many good funny parts in it, and the American version is kind of boring a little bit. Like it was just way more serious. It felt like.
Yeah, and Toho they don't just make monster movies. They make all kinds of movies, and they made a lot of comedies at this time. And starting with Mothra, took a more comedic approach to the films in general, to the monster movies in general. But yeah, all of that gets cut out. He has a few guests come in. One guy who's a dinosaur expert just shows us a child's dinosaur book. There is some kind of Japanese UN correspondent that he talks to a little bit. He also seems to know things that he shouldn't be able to know. He tells us stuff that I'm like, how did you get that information?
Yeah.
And they also show us a bit with the communications satellite that is a shot of the alien satellite stolen from the Mysterians.
Mysterians. Yeah. Which is hilarious.
So if you have a choice, watch the Japanese version.
Yeah, it is longer, but it is worth it. There was something in the American version that I felt like was stupid, but I kind of felt like the Japanese version needed something like this. It was where the guy is like holding the marble and he's like showing the size of Godzilla's brain, and he's like, well, this is Godzilla's brain, and he's like, and I thought that was, I mean, even though it was really stupid and not believable, I don't want to go too far into how I feel about this early on, but yeah, I felt like the things that they did in the Japanese version to make it's too early to talk about this. Let's just
yeah, he does compare. He does show us a comparison to a lizard brain versus an ape's brain, which in real life there is a great difference. So an ape ought to be able to outthink a lizard, but Godzilla is not an ordinary lizard.
Is not a fucking lizard. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
As we mentioned, I think we mentioned, is from 1962. It's in color. It's 98 minutes. The US version is 91 minutes. But then a few years later, there was a Japanese film festival. I saw it described as sort of summer camp for couch potatoes. It was a film festival for kids in Japan.
Cute.
And they showed it there, and they cut it down to 74 minutes. So apparently Honda or somebody looked at the American version and said, oh, actually I can cut this part and this part. Maybe we don't need to see that guy put his shoes on before he goes outside. You know, maybe I can make a few,
that makes sense.
I can make a few cuts, especially since we're showing it in this festival with a bunch of other movies, maybe shorten it up a little bit.
Nice.
The director is Ishiro Honda, of course, and Akira Ifukube does the music again. The budget was
Like it do.
$620,000, and the box office was $10 million.
Ooh.
Both monsters are about 150 feet, and the death count is 62, and I've given it a racism factor of 3.
Oh, damn. This is our most racist film.
Well, the blackface is pretty bad in this one.
It is pretty bad.
And the presentation of most of the natives is very, they're kind of primitive and dumb, and it's not great.
Definitely not great.
So, yeah, those are our stats. It stars Tadeo Takashima as Osamu Sakurai and Yu Fukiji as Kinsaburo Fure. And these two guys do a bunch of movies together. We're going to see them again next week in Atragon. But apparently they did a bunch of just straight up comedy movies together, as well as both of them appearing. I think this is the first time we've seen them in the Godzilla series, but they'll both appear in more of these movies. It seems like if Toho likes you, they will put you in a bunch of their stuff, not just their monster movies. They'll put you in all kinds of things. But these guys are primarily comedians, and they did a bunch of comedies together. Ichiro Arashima plays Mr. Taco. That's Taco with a K, which is Japanese for octopus. That comes up later.
Oh.
And this actor has been nicknamed the Japanese Chaplin. He's the studio guy. He's the producer, director.
He's hilarious.
And we see a few of our old favorites, like Kenji Sahara.
Yay! Yay! Kenji Sahara, shout
plays
out.
Kazu Fujita. And
Of course, he plays the boyfriend.
and Akihiko Hirata plays Dr. Shigesawa. Honeybee, did you recognize him this time?
Yes, I did. I even wrote it down just so I could be like, okay, I know these people. I finally recognized
He was
them.
Shirazawa in Godzilla, and now he is Shigesawa. There's a bunch of other people in it, but those are the main ones that we have seen before and will see again, so I wanted to point them out. So, let's get into it. We start with very dramatic music and a globe.
Oh, that was something else that was very different in the American version was the music.
Yeah, I think they replaced it.
Completely. None of it was the same.
In both versions, we start with a globe and a narrator, but the narrator in the Japanese version is talking about how the Earth spins or revolves at a speed of 1,670 kilometers per hour. What would happen to us if it stopped? And then it stops, and we see that we're watching a science program, that this is not meant to be planet Earth. It's a globe. It's meant to be a fake Earth. Whereas in the American version, they show it, and is it the Shakespeare quote? Is it, there are more things in heaven and earth, Horatio, than are dreamt of in your philosophy? And then we just cut to the UN guy. And so it seems like in the American version, they're trying to make us think we're actually looking at the Earth when it's so clearly a fake Earth.
Yeah, it looks kind of like a clay or something. Yeah. Paper mache.
Yeah, but that's okay. In this version, it's meant to be a fake Earth. They're not trying to trick us. We're watching a science program. We're watching the Miracle series sponsored by Pacific Pharmaceutical Company. And the presenter on this science program talks about global warming.
Yes, I said a little global warming for you here.
And there's some TV executive guy is bored by the program. This is our Japanese chaplain. And he flips a coin. And he does this throughout the movie where he flips a coin and makes a decision, but it doesn't really seem connected. He doesn't ever say, well, if it's heads, I'll do this, and tails, I'll do that. He just flips a coin and then acts. It's very
Reacts. Yeah. I don't even think it's like to make a decision, because at one point in the movie, he kind of, it's almost like, as if the coin knows the answer, as if like heads is yes and tails is no or something, because he flips the coin and he asks the coin a question and then flips it, and like, I'm like, is this a psychic coin? Why is he so reliant on this coin?
It didn't make any
Why
any
does
sense
coin
to
know
me.
what's up?
Yeah. Mr. Taco works for the pharmaceutical company, which is sponsoring the TV program. So there was a time when sponsors were much more closely attached to the TV shows or the radio shows that they sponsored. Like you might have a show called The Colgate Comedy Hour is the actual name of the show.
Oh, yeah.
He's very frustrated about the bad ratings this science show is getting, and he wants to do something about it, as if it's his problem, as if he's the producer of the show. Rather than just sponsoring a different show, it doesn't seem to work that way back then. He needs to come up with something good. Whereas these days, it's, the network makes the show, and then a bunch of different people just buy ad time, and they're not directly connected to the show. So he starts yelling at his employees and complaining about their 5% rating, and no one cares about science. You guys do some research about what people want. And the phone rings, and he does some phone shtick with like different phones and picking up the wrong one and something. And it's the president of the company also complaining about, he's just yelled at everybody, and then he picks up the phone and he gets yelled at by the president of the company because the show's boring and stupid. And then on the show, they talk about a submarine investigating something in the Pacific, and pans to a photo of the sub, which then dissolves into the actual sub.
And now we are in the Arctic Sea.
Yes. And we see Americans in the submarine. There's a couple of guys in suits on this sub. And I don't think it's ever, there's Navy guys in uniforms, and then there's just a couple of business suit guys, and it's not ever really made clear to me who the hell they are. But they're detecting warm water and a glowing iceberg. Somebody says it looks like Cherenkov light that you see in nuclear reactors, and they call for an emergency dive. And then we cut to a commercial for Passion, which is some kind of drug, an energy pill, with a guy frantically drumming, which turns out to be a case of Chekhov's drums, because it's going to become important later that this guy knows how to drum.
Yeah.
And the drummer is one of our leads, Sakurai, played by Tadao Takashima. He's supposed to be a cameraman, but he's had to fill in because they sent the agency sent the wrong kind of drummer over. They sent a taiko drummer. That's one of those traditional Japanese drums, but they want like a modern trap set drummer for this commercial. Not a great big drum with inch thick sticks. They want, modern drum with cymbals and shit. So he's pinch hitting.
This was one of the things that was kind of like not necessary for the movie completely. But one of my, I just really love this scene,
right?
And was super sad it wasn't in the American version.
And they cut all this kind of stuff out. And the other guy who's talking to him is his comedy partner, Fukiji, playing Kinsaburo Furi for the UA. And the sponsors ordered him to boost the ratings, and he has an idea. Some doctor has a story about a monster on Faroe Island, and they do a little map work.
Little map work here, searching for a giant demon god.
The natives said something about a mammoth evil spirit has awakened. So Taco flips his coin and decides it must be true. He's skeptical, but the coin tells him It's true. It's a great.
Coin knows all.
It's a great story. Viewers will love it, and we can't have a flop, and neither can TTV is the station that they're affiliated with, and their rivals at QTV are running a Seahawk Undersea Adventure, and it turns out it's not laid out clearly, but it appears that Seahawk is the actual submarine that we saw a minute ago, and the rival TV station is going to run a show about that. So he tells him to pinch hit for us and go get the doctor.
Yeah, so basically, King Kong versus Godzilla is all about TV views. And getting enough TV views. Which is shocking, but yeah, it's true.
And this movie is trying to make some statements about television and capitalism and advertising, and it's sort of kind of lightly satirizing all of that stuff, all of which gets lost in the American version. So the Japanese version is really about something else entirely than the American version of the film. Whereas like the original Godzilla was about nuclear war, this one is about television and advertising and pharmaceuticals. At home, Sakurai notices that his sister is not there. He comes in and for some reason he looks around at the shoes by the door, and for some reason he realizes my sister's not here. She must be down the hall at her boyfriend's place. And so he goes, he's in they're in an apartment complex. And so just like 2 doors down is where her boyfriend lives, and he goes and knocks. And he is annoyed that they're in there. Apparently they've been making out in the back room while she's cooking. Yeah. They've been fooling around. She's cooking dinner, but she's not in the room when he first comes in. And
when he comes in, he has lipstick on his face.
Yes. She wanted to have a farewell party for him because he's about to go somewhere. And he shows off this super thread that his company has developed. He's leaving to test it out on some ships. And he shows it off by going over to the balcony and hanging off of it and letting the thread hold him. And it doesn't break. It holds his weight. And he tells us how...
Yeah, it's like kind of looks like string, but it's as what does he say, strong as steel and smooth as silk or something like that.
Yeah, so it's some kind of super fiber. He just has a spool of thread of it, but we find out later they're going to make, bigger like ropes and stuff out of it. So he's going to be going to the Solomon Islands, and Sakurai is upset that the boyfriend's steak is bigger than his.
Yeah.
And then there's an article in the newspaper about the shining iceberg.
Yes, and then back to the glowing iceberg we go.
Yes, on the submarine. And I'm thinking, how long is it taking them to reach this iceberg? Because they spotted it, and then there's been time for somebody to send a message back to Tokyo and for a newspaper to print a story about the iceberg before they actually reach it. And then they hit it?
Yeah,
they run into the iceberg. At the pharmaceutical company later, they're having a big send-off for the expedition to gather data from Faroe Island.
The quote-unquote research party, even though it's only the 2 gentlemen.
And they're dressed in explorers' outfits, and they say that, but we're just a couple of clowns. And are we overdoing the PR? And then the sister and a friend stopped by and mentioned it's been 5 days since her fiance left, and there's been no word of his ship, the Shinsei Maru 2. Mr. Taco is upset that their going away festivities are not getting the press that he wanted. He's invited the press all to come to this thing because the reporters have all left to go cover a bigger story.
And he's like, this is a major news story.
Right.
What do you mean they're gone for a major news? This is a major news story. And then we go back to the submarine and the iceberg, and the upper deck is damaged.
Yes. And the submarine is stuck, and the iceberg is cracking, and repairs are impossible.
The escape hatch is damaged.
They fire a Mayday signal, and the Geiger count the Geiger counter is rising. And
Mm-hmm.
is this where we see civilian scientists on the submarine? I just wrote civilian scientists on the sub. Water starts pouring in. Water starts pouring in, and they call for abandoned ship, but they can't because the hatch is jammed. And somebody says, "Look!" And there's fire, and we hear Godzilla roar.
And we also hear one person say, Gojira.
Yeah. Somebody's finally remembered.
Yeah, I was like, someone said it.
This is where these movies start establishing a rather loose continuity, but a continuity nonetheless, in that this is meant to be the iceberg that he got stuck in at the end of Godzilla Raids again.
Again, yeah. Yes, I was very excited.
Somebody on the ship either recognizes the roar or realizes, oh shit, a few years ago Godzilla got buried in an iceberg, and maybe this is the same one.
Oh shit. I think I remember this iceberg.
But this is a thing that's different. In the American version, they just act as if Godzilla's been frozen in this iceberg for millions of years, rather than just a few years.
He's coming back. Yeah.
And yet they all seem to know who Godzilla is, but he's been stuck in that iceberg for millions of years. Then we cut to the expedition ship, and Faroe Island has been spotted.
Yeah.
Here we get some natives who are Japanese actors in blackface.
Yeesh. And also the language that they make up is really horrible. It's just so stupid. It's just real stupid because we can because it's English word.
Right.
Go ahead.
Yes. There's a few points where they're just babbling gibberish, but then a few English words pop out.
And the English words make everything that they're blabbering about make sense. Like one guy will say something, and then the translator, who is in probably the worst blackface, will walk up to the chief.
It wouldn't make sense, though, to the original audience. The Japanese audience watching this movie would probably not understand the English words that they throw in.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. Yeah, but you're right. But it's just so weird because he says like hero. I don't know. It was just really, really weird because I felt like it was very like a baby.
Yeah. Well, the words I noticed were wrong place. They're like blah, 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 gibberish, wrong place.
Yes.
So, yeah. But this raft.
Yeah, and then he's like, tell him we have permission. And the chief goes, no good.
Yeah. A raft from the ship drops the two guys and their guide, who is also a guy in blackface, off on the island. Mm-hmm. So he's presumably some guy from a nearby place who might speak the language well enough to translate.
Yeah.
And then the guys in the raft just turn around and go back to the ship as natives are approaching in a hostile fashion. And they're just like, well, good luck. Bye. And they charge with spears and capture the three guys immediately. And the village has a big fence. Not quite as sturdy as the wall from the original King Kong, but it's clearly meant to be that same kind of thing. But it's more of a fence.
It's definitely better than the little tiny stick fence that we saw.
In Varan, yes. And there is some kind of Kong ceremony going on, and there are women turning a mill making juice out of some berries, some fruit.
Mm-hmm. Like sacrificial women's and shit.
The doctor earlier had mentioned this fruit, and that the animals loved the juice of this fruit, because this ends up being important. the doctor that they were interviewing who first told them about this island. So presumably these berries had something to do with his pharmaceutical research, which is how he was associated with them to begin with. But the intruders are brought to the chief, and Como is the guy's name, I believe. And we'll see this actor again in a few movies. A few movies from now, I was watching one of them and I was like, oh, that's the guy, but he's not wearing blackface this time. Kono. Senkichi Omura plays Kono. And he translates, tell them we're on a goodwill mission. And this is where the chief says, wrong place. And they should leave at once. And they tell him to ask permission to stay. And he offers them a radio as a gift. And turns it on, and there's some static for a minute. But then the music comes in really loud and strong, and they're getting very good reception out in the middle of nowhere on this little tiny transistor radio. And the music comes on really loud, though, and startles all the natives. And then they start handing out cigarettes.
Yes, and then they poison them with cigarettes.
Yes.
Even the children.
Yes, there's a kid wants a cigarette, and they're like, okay, but don't let your mom see. But then the mom takes the
Mom's
cigarette
like, give me
from
that.
him, and she smokes it herself. And then with this mom and this kid become important. But yeah, I'm wondering, they must have encountered some outsiders before, because they all seem to know, oh, look, it's cigarettes, as if.
Or maybe they're like,
them
oh, they do cigarettes too. We kind of have something like this.
They just seem very excited, as if, oh, we haven't had those since the last guys came and got killed on the island. So,
Yeah.
so they say, okay, you can stay, but the chief won't be responsible if the spirit eats you.
Yeah, if the god eats you, like, you're bad. You can stay, but I'm not responsible if you get sacrificed and eaten alive.
Yeah, well, and then here I noticed that they're wearing little armbands that say TTV. But I think I've seen this since in some of the other movies, that this might be a thing, that the press wears armbands to distinguish themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's some lightning, and the natives immediately start praying, and they think it's the evil spirit. But Sakurai is like, yeah, it's just lightning. But then there's a roar.
Yeah, he's like, it's just a thunderstorm. Ha ha ha. They think God is just a thunderstorm. And then it's like, ah! And his friend's like, thunder doesn't roar like that, does it?
Yeah. And then we cut to a lion on television roaring, and the girls are watching in the apartment. Fumiko and Tammy. Fumiko is the sister. Did they actually say her name earlier? I've noticed in some of these movies that a character will be on screen for a long time before anyone actually says their name.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they did. They actually did say her name earlier, though. Her brother says her name when he's looking for her. Oh,
right. And also, the credits often have a full name for this person, but we only ever hear one of their names on screen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So maybe the script or something says what their full name is. So Tammy wants to know if she's upset and worried. No, well, have a sandwich.
Have a worry sandwich.
Yeah.
You should always eat a sandwich when you're worried, honey.
And her friend is very upbeat and casual about the whole thing. They're like, oh, are you worried that your fiance might be dead? Come on, cheer up. Have a sandwich.
Cheer up, have a turkey and Swiss.
And on the Shinsai Maru 2, they have been ordered to return because something is going on in the Arctic.
Which is a toy boat.
Yes. The fiance here is Kazu Fujita, is Kenji Sahara.
Yeah, shout out.
And they wanted, can't we keep going? But then the captain teases Kenji about Fumiko. He's like, I've seen you looking at that picture of that hot little number you got back at home.
That spicy little number.
And then a report comes in over their radio that the Seahawk has vanished, and that's how we know that the submarine is the Seahawk that they talked about earlier.
Right. Yeah, and that an American ambulance has been sent out.
And American rescue planes are searching, and helicopters are searching.
Also toys.
Yes. They spot some yellow dye markers in the water around the iceberg, which I guess is the SOS signal, or the distress signal they sent. They just release some dye markers. I guess that's what subs do.
Mm-hmm.
And then the iceberg cracks open, and at 26 minutes and 17 seconds, Gojira appears and roars.
Gojira! Woo! Release the tiny toy tanks.
Yes.
Everything escalates really quickly here.
Yep. Toy tanks and guns. And somewhere, fire as Godzilla approaches the shore.
We got toy tanks. We've got a tiny toy town. We have fire breath. We got tail whips. Serving you Gojira glowing spikes, baby.
Yeah, he melts some of the toys with his atomic breath. Does all of that stuff. And destroys a base. And then the headlines say, Godzilla awakes again and wreaks havoc.
Mankind is threatened again.
Mm-hmm. We cut to the defense agency, and the reporter is asking Akihiko Harata as Dr. Shigesawa some questions. And he says that Godzilla wasn't dead. He was just in hibernation.
He was just taking a little snooze, taking a little lizard snooze. It happens.
Gives us some so-called facts to support this, that 200-year-old frog was found in New Mexico, and a 3,000-year-old lotus seed was found that then bared fruit. So therefore, it shouldn't be a big deal that Godzilla just slept for a few years. What was it, about 10 years probably between this and Godzilla raids again?
Yeah, I guess so.
And they want to know, will he come here? And he's like, yep.
Yeah, absolutely. Return
is more accurate. His homing instinct will lead him back here. And then we see more headlines. I didn't write them down, but I think they're just about Godzilla's going to come here and we're all fucked.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Godzilla returns.
Mr. Taco is mad that Godzilla is getting all the covers of the magazines and stuff and the headlines in the newspapers. And somebody says, yeah, and he has a movie too.
There's a movie.
Somebody says there's Gojira yaki in the restaurants, which yaki's a type of food. It's a style of cooking rather than a specific dish. So I think it's a little bit like saying barbecue. Barbecue refers to a whole type of cooking, not just one specific thing.
Right.
And he's like, where is my evil spirit? Send a telegram.
Send a telegram to
find...
the dudes.
Yep. To
with
find
the demon
my evil
god.
Spirit. And on Faro Island, the guys are exploring. And Furi tells Sakurai he heard about Gojira on the chief's radio. So that's pretty convenient. The batteries have not given out yet. And he was able to hear a news report. We're lucky that we're here. And they explore and explore and explore. And then there's lightning that startles everyone. And Furi has an encounter with a lizard.
Which he just swings around his head like a helicopter.
Yeah. And then Sakurai shoots it and wakes up Kong.
Yeah.
Because there's a rock slide and some lightning. And they run. And it's at night. And there's more lightning and praying. And Furei is in bed with a fever and wants to go home. And Sakurai is excited.
Yeah, he's like, I don't want to be your partner anymore.
Yeah. Kono, the translator, sends the kid, Chikiro, the kid that we saw earlier with the cigarettes, to get some of the red juice, because that will help Furei sleep.
The sleepy juice.
And the kid runs to the juice hut, where they store all of the big vats of juice that they've made. And then we see his mom out looking for him. Now, I want to say something about the mom.
Okay.
Possibly inappropriate. Not sure.
Okay.
The mother is one of the Japanese actresses in blackface, and she's wearing a wig with sort of an afro wig to make her look like a native. Mm-hmm. And as inappropriate as it is, it looks good on her.
Oh my God.
She wears it well. I'm just saying. I think she still looks attractive in this stupid makeup and this ridiculous wig. She pulls it off pretty well as anybody can pull off blackface. Well, I mean, it's not like a minstrel show blackface. It's not a complete caricature. It's just she's Japanese. She's not African.
Yeah.
Anyway, I just like, hey, she looks pretty good.
She looks great in that grass skirt.
Yeah. And then, but as she's out looking for her son, a giant octopus approaches.
Yeah. And also, it sounds like his name. I know this isn't his name, but it sounds like his name is Skittle. It sounds like she's calling him, and she's like, Skittle! And I don't know what his name actually is, but I'm going to call him Skittle because I think that's really cute.
Okay. And this giant octopus is being played by an actual octopus.
Yeah, it looks great. And also, if you are into ASMR, it is juicy and it sounds very juicy.
And we cannot say that no octopuses were harmed in the making of this film.
Yeah, we definitely
Because
can.
I read whether or not he was actually harmed in the filming. He is flung around, but Honda killed and ate that octopus after they were done with it.
Oh!
They cooked that fucker up.
They cooked it up. They celebrated. They were like,
Yeah.
cheers. That was a great take.
But the kid drops the juice, and Mom finds him, and she's mad. And the octopus wrecks the hut that they're in, the juice hut. And everyone runs out to see what's up. Somebody says something about Taco. There's a little who's on first bit here where Sakurai and Furei have some confusion. So Furei says, what's going on? And Sakurai tells him Taco, and he's like, Mr. Taco's here? And the subtitles actually puts octopus in parentheses after Taco so that we will get the joke that all the Japanese speakers would get.
That's nice.
Yeah. Like, here's a pun that does not work in your language, but let's explain it. The natives throw a bunch of spears. Sakurai shoots his rifle. The octopus grabs and throws one of the natives, but he's okay.
Yeah.
And they throw torches. So it seems, I don't know that anybody ever actually explicitly says this, but the doctor had mentioned that animals are attracted to the juice. So it seems like the octopus is specifically attacking the juice hut because it smelled it and wants the juice.
He wants that scissor, that sleepy juice.
And the mom and the kid are still alive in the hut, but they escape. Oh, and I wrote Taco is also slang for stupid. So I guess calling somebody an octopus would be like calling someone a donkey or a jackass or something
Okay.
in English, I guess. And then at 37 minutes and 31 seconds, we finally see Kong. And then somebody yells out that it's King Kong. Mm-hmm. So in this universe, maybe Kong's attack back in 33 also happened and they all know who he is, I guess.
Well, I think that these natives, this is their giant god or whatever.
Right, but I'm saying the Japanese guys, I think one of them says it's King Kong. As if this spirit that we've been investigating, it turns out it's King Kong, that thing that everybody knows about.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
So
okay.
yeah, so in this world, I guess back in the 30s, King Kong attacked New York, and so when you see a giant ape, you go, "Oh, it's King Kong." I meant to mention this earlier. At the time this movie came out, King Kong was actually more popular in Japan than Godzilla was. So there were numerous re-releases of King Kong over the years, re-releases in the movie theaters. Mm-hmm. And at this point, it was probably also being shown on TV fairly regularly. So I'm thinking that the last time it was released in the theaters, it was a big hit in Japan as well as other places. So it was a kind of a big deal to get King Kong to fight Godzilla. American critics were not actually happy about this idea, nor were they happy about it being played by a guy in a suit. It turns out, though, that this idea was originally Willis O'Brien's idea for King Kong to fight Frankenstein, which then, I won't go through the whole thing. It's all on the Wikipedia if you want to find out. But he was working with somebody to develop the idea, and, it kind of got stuck in development hell. But then that
like
guy,
Mary Shelley, like Frankenstein's monster
well,
Frankenstein.
yes and no. I believe the idea was going to be that Dr. Frankenstein had built a new creature that was like part elephant and part this and part that. So it wasn't like a 6 or 7 foot tall man,
Okay.
but it was
Yeah.
a new giant Frankenstein monster made out of various large animal parts. I believe that was his original idea. And then
What?
that sort of fell through, but then somebody pitched it to somebody else and someone else bought the rights, and it went through a couple of stages until finally somebody's like, okay, but what if we make a Godzilla instead? And by this time, Willis O'Brien had been left behind and cut out of the process. But the American critics, who were just all appalled that Japan had taken King Kong and turned him into a guy in a suit, didn't realize that the whole thing had started as the original co-creator of Kong as his idea. It just went through so many different hands that it turned into something very, very different.
Huh.
But we will get into some Frankenstein kaiju coming up later.
Interesting.
Anyway,
Yeah, so Kong like comes in, he like throws a fit, breaks some
Yes.
shit, throws Octopus around, beats his chest, you know,
it
King
breaks the
Kong
jars,
shit.
and the octopus ends up on his head at one point.
Oh yeah.
And then Kong drinks drinks paint. The juice that they make looks like red paint.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe it was. It's a very thick juice.
Yeah, he takes a drink and then he's like, damn, this is good. And then he just like shoots all of it like shot. Drinks,
And then
just drinks all of it.
Yeah, and then it's sleepy time for Kong, and the natives play a lullaby and do a dance. And here's where I actually wrote down, Mom looks good in spite of wig and makeup, because she's kind of leading the dance, I think.
Yeah, the sacrificial girls come out and shake their little sacrificial titties at Kong.
Then the guys say, let's build a raft to take Kong.
Yeah. And then skip to a stage. Like, what the hell? I'm like, a raft? You mean a fucking ark? Like, how?
I wrote down, why do the natives allow this or help them to do it?
Yeah, I didn't think that they did, but maybe they did. They would have had to have.
Yeah, exactly. Those two guys couldn't have built this thing by themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Because the Kong is supposed to be their god. And we just saw him protect them from
Save
another
them.
monster. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, now he's drugged, and we're going to put him on a fucking boat and send him off.
And then in Japan, Mr. Taco is happy because Kong has all the headlines now. And he's going to meet the boat by helicopter. And he goes to change clothes. The accountant lady, who we've seen earlier in some of these office scenes, wonders who is stronger. And the other assistant says, it's not a wrestling match, but that's exactly what it's going to be. Taco enters in his explorer's outfit, and he likes the idea, and then says the title of the movie.
Dun, dun, dun.
And when we cut to the boat dragging the raft, and this is the first time we've seen this, but we will see it again and again. In the original King Kong, they don't actually show us how they got Kong from the island to New York, but this is the method that will be used over and over again throughout the years.
Yeah.
Build a raft and drag him behind the boat. Although I think in the most recent one, they just tied him to the deck of a rather large boat.
What I thought was funny was like when they said, we're going to build a raft, and the other guy's like, a raft? Like, what are you talking about? And I'm thinking, a raft? What the hell? How the fuck are they going to carry it? And then it's like the next scene, he's just on the raft. I'm like, oh, okay, they're not going to explain it, show it, nothing. We're just here now.
Right.
It went from idea to now we are on the raft. Got it. The magic of the theater.
Taco is lowered onto the deck from a helicopter and congratulates them. I think his plan is to show up when the ship comes into harbor in his explorer's outfit and act like he's been there the whole time.
Uh-huh.
You know, pose for all the cameras and stuff.
Oh,
and
yeah.
act like he was the big explorer. And then he almost blows up the raft by mistake. They've got the raft they have the raft rigged with dynamite, I guess just in case Kong starts to wake up and tries to kill them all. They have the raft rigged with dynamite and a wire going from the raft to the ship that's attached to one of those dynamite plungers you see in all the cartoons. And for some reason, the plunger is in the up position, which is not... It shouldn't be there until you're ready to blow it up. It should be down, and then you pull it up and you push it down. And I think what happens when you do that is it creates a little electrical current, which then goes through the wires and detonates the dynamite. But for some reason, they have it already in the up position, and Taco does some comedy shit where he almost falls on it, and then they're all like, whew, and then in a little bit goes ahead and falls on it anyway, but they've done something wrong, and it doesn't blow up.
Yeah.
They have not hooked it up properly.
Yeah.
They talk about how they'll get to Japan tomorrow and wake up Kong, and then another ship approaches. And then we cut to Fumi's friend, Tammy, who enters the apartment with a newspaper story about a missing ship, which is a Danish ship, and the inside
No survivors.
and possibly Godzilla sank it. So they want to go to the spot where it was last seen. She decides this was her boyfriend's ship, although I seem to have written down a different name here, so I don't know. But she's going to try to go find her boyfriend because she has the skills to do this, I guess. It just seems weird because nobody else's family, that ship's full of people who have wives and girlfriends and children and relatives, and they don't all go running out into the middle of nowhere to just try to find the ship themselves. But she's going to try to go to wherever it was seen last. Back on the other ship, the Navy has boarded to inform Taco that he is considered to have smuggled Kong because he doesn't have the right paperwork for that. And he didn't follow procedures.
And that he's a security threat.
Yeah. He didn't follow procedures and will be responsible for any destruction Kong causes, and Taco faints. Because apparently he did not think about any of this up until this moment.
Nope, he just wanted those headlines, baby.
At the apartments, the boyfriend comes by. He's not dead. And he startles Tammy because she thought he was dead. And she tells him that Fumi went to Hokkaido to look for you. And then a neighbor and a child are leaving. They're evacuating before Gojira arrives. And then he asks her what train Fumi is on, and he's going to try to catch her. So this is all just really happening just so Fumiko will be in jeopardy because she's going to go to where Godzilla's going to tear shit up. We cut to the train, and Fujita is in a Jeep trying to head off the train or catch up with it or something. And at headquarters, Gojira has been spotted 50 kilometers south.
I will say in this little toy train, we've seen a lot of toy trains at this point in our movie watching careers, and this toy train has little tiny silhouette people in it. I was like, oh, good job.
Yeah, little paper cutouts in the
Very
windows.
cute. Yeah. Nicely done. That was a good little add-in for my little toy love, my love for toys.
Godzilla's been spotted 50 kilometers south of Sendai, and then we see a shot of Godzilla near the road. And the commander says they can't act until they hear from the Prime Minister, but contact military... What? Contact military school to send observers?
What?
I don't know what I'm talking about. Is that in reference to Godzilla or Kong?
I do not know. The next thing I have is here comes Gojira, train stops, and then the captain of the train lets everyone know that the captain of the train, conductor, lets everyone know that he's coming, and panic and chaos.
Well, he says, don't panic. And they all immediately panic.
And then when they're getting off, I was thinking, damn, how many people were on that train? It's quite a few people.
They all run from the train to buses. And the buses are full and leave without Fumiko. So, of course, the one person who has somebody looking for her gets left behind. Fujita is stopped at a roadblock. And when he hears that some people are still back there, just immediately assumes that one of them must be the person I'm looking for, so he drives right through the roadblock.
Yeah, and this little dork, she's just ends up somehow at the river and then just is splashing around in a circle like a dipshit and like just like in a circle just for no, what are you doing? Just throws herself on a rock and then Kazuzo or what is his name? Kazuo?
Yes, Kazuo Fujita.
Kazuo, yeah. Kazuo finds her somehow
Yes.
flailing around in the water like a fish.
Yeah. Godzilla wrecks the train. Passing people tell him that a girl's still back there. So he finds her in the river. And Godzilla's moving very slowly. So they get in the Jeep and they kind of hide. Like turn off the headlights, pull over and turn off the headlights. And Godzilla passes by without stomping on them. And then Kazuo is a little upset with her because he's like, "What? How did you think you were going to help me by coming out here?" And I mean, they're both a little upset and a little relieved that they're not dead. At HQ, they discuss options: million-volt shock. In the U.S. version, they discuss nukes as an option, but as we know in the Japanese movies, the nukes are never an option. If anybody brings it up, it will immediately be dismissed.
Yeah, someone even in this movie says consider using the hydrogen bomb, and they're like, nope. That's
how we got here to begin with.
Yep.
So maybe the million volts will work. They do some map work. Godzilla is in Natsuki area. And then a message comes in. Message comes in that King Kong is awake. At the raft, we see Kong waking up.
He's confused and pissed.
Yep. He's causing waves. And Taco does some umbrella shtick because of all the water that's being splashed up. And they say to cut the lines and blow the raft. And they argue about it. And here's where he accidentally pushes down the plunger and nothing happens. And so then the two guys grab guns and start trying to shoot the dynamite to make it go off.
And then
eventually they hit some of it and boom. But Kong's not dead. He rises up and roars. Maybe here we should mention that Kong kind of looks like shit.
Yeah, he really does.
The Godzilla suit's very good. The Kong suit is not very good. I read somewhere that although they got the rights to use Kong, they did not have the rights to use Willis O'Brien's design. So his face looks very different.
And his arms are
His arms are too long.
Very long.
They're trying to give him some sort of gorilla look, but they've just done it by making his arms too long.
Yeah.
And so yeah, he looks very derpy. So that could be one of the reasons why the American critics were not happy. But then we cut to some big machines digging a hole. The army's going to try to drive Godzilla into a pit. And then phase 2 will be set off explosives and bury him under tons of earth. Then a message comes in that Kong has landed, an evacuation is ordered, and then Kong stomps on a bunch of toys.
Yeah, he's just running around. And someone says here that he was sensing Godzilla and going towards him.
Yeah, which we get that idea decades later in the most recent version.
Right.
That these alpha titans can sense each other and you can't have more than one of them or they'll
There can be only one.
But the radio reports that he's rampaging through several towns. But we must make it clear that King Kong is a real animal, whereas Godzilla is a monster born from radiation. So I guess they're just prejudiced against mutants.
Yeah, fuck them. Team Gojira.
And then a car drives.
Here we go.
A car drives through the army checkpoint, and it's the whole Pacific Pharma team. And Taco says that King Kong is our sponsor, but I think there's got to be a translation issue because it's the other way around. We're King Kong's sponsor, right?
Yeah.
But anyway, he's trying to claim some sort of ownership of Kong, which is a mistake because you're going to be held liable. But they've already made it clear he's going to be held liable, so I guess he thinks as long as I'm on the hook for it, I should have some control. Godzilla approaches. The army catches the pharmaceutical company crew hiding in the grass, sort of. And they have a camera, and they're ordered to get back. And we see Godzilla and Kong heading towards each other, and the pharma guys find a good place to watch.
Round one.
Fight! They find a good place to watch and film and speculate on who will win. And then the monsters both do an intimidation display. Godzilla has the high ground.
Yeah, he does.
Shows off his atomic breath by taking out a helicopter. Kong throws some rocks. Godzilla blasts Kong. Kong retreats. Godzilla makes some weird clicking sound when he does this thing where he kind of flaps, kind of flexes his arms and makes this weird clicking when he does it. And nobody mentions it or explains it. I don't know what is happening, but it's a thing he does. Later, the army at the power station is trying to set up 1,000,000 volts to presumably take out Godzilla. And the reporters question Dr. Segazawa why Kong and Godzilla hate each other, and he says, I don't know. And I don't know if King Kong will win. Which is the mark of a good scientist, because sometimes it's okay in science to just say, I don't know.
I don't know.
You don't have to make shit up. You don't have to pull wild theories out of your ass. You can just say, I don't have enough data to make a proper hypothesis at this point. I don't know.
Yeah. Don't misuse science.
There you go. Then they're making a giant pit trap, and they're going to fill it with gasoline.
And then a Godzilla.
At night, Godzilla's approaching the trap, and they light up the gas, and they use fire. Oh, so they make they both make a pit trap, and they make a trench full of gas, and they light up the gas to drive him towards the trap, and then he falls in, and they blow it, and the explosives bury Godzilla in the pit. Nope, it doesn't. He climbs out.
Nope. Operation Burial was a huge fat fail.
Yep. Headquarters gets the call that the trap worked, but it didn't. And also that Kong is rampaging through Tokyo. And there's evacuations. And in the apartment, Fujita and Fumiko and Sakurai argue about whether or not they should evacuate. And the PA announces that...
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, the PA announces that Godzilla's moving towards Tokyo.
Yes, and we get a little power line action.
Yes. The army is ready to get Godzilla with the power lines, and Godzilla gets a shock but then avoids the wires. And some general is enthusiastic, but Shigesawa is skeptical. And then a soldier yells out that King Kong is approaching Matsuto.
And then Kong just fucking straight flosses his teeth with that power line.
So
he gives no shit.
In their original forms, King Kong is absolutely no match for Godzilla.
Yeah. Absolutely.
They had to
do something.
They had to increase Kong's size to begin with for them to even have a fight. And then they've added this element that we're about to see here, that electricity has an adverse effect on Godzilla, but it powers up Kong.
Yeah. Which is such bullshit, and I just want to say is stupid.
Yeah. And we get a similar thing.
But they did have to do something.
We get some similar shit in Godzilla versus Kong years later.
Yeah.
The pharma crew and a bunch of randos watch Kong approach and argue about who will win or if electricity will work on Kong. Here's where I noticed that the subtitles on YouTube and on my Blu-ray are different.
Oh.
Yeah, for some reason, the Japanese version of this movie is on YouTube, and it has, as of a week ago, had not been taken down.
Nice.
So if you don't have the rather expensive Blu-ray, you can probably watch it on YouTube. But the translation's slightly different.
Yeah. Funny.
The Commandant and Dr. Segazawa arrive at Kong's location, and Kong bites the wires and likes it. And at first I was wondering, is this some script element left over from the Frankenstein version? Except it wasn't Godzilla versus Frankenstein, it was Kong versus Frankenstein. So why would the electricity be... Maybe in that version the electricity was going to power up the Frankenstein creature, but I don't know.
But they just kept it
and switched it to Kong? I don't know.
Yeah, that's stupid.
The reporter asks about this, and Dr. Suragawa pulls out another one of these anecdotes out of his butt about some Swedish postman who got electrocuted and lived, or hit by lightning and lived, or something. I don't remember. And,
yeah.
And Kong roars, people running, getting on the train, and Fumi and Fujita are separated. One of them Fumi gets on the train and the door's shut before Fujita can get on.
Yes, we get another toy train moment, and it's also so great. They did such a good job with this train moment as well.
Kong is in the city, punches buildings, and grabs a train, and then does what Kong does, picks up Fumiko.
And he picks up a lady.
Picks her up out of the train and walks through tracks? Train tracks, I guess. Are they elevated train tracks? That must be it. He walks through some elevated train tracks, I think. Which one of the trains he wrecks in the original is an elevated train, I believe. Tanks roll in and spotlights, and the army's ready to open fire. But Sakura...
Except he has Fumiko in his hand.
Sakura and Furei come in, and he's like, stop! He has my sister. She's in his hand. How do we save her? And then Kong climbs up a building, but it's a relatively short building. He just sort of kind of steps up onto it. It's not like the Empire State Building where he has to scale the building. He just sort of hops up onto it. And Fujita freaks out. He's ready to like take on Kong himself, hand to hand. But the way he's gesturing at Kong, he's yelling at Kong, and the way he's moving his arms reminds Sakura of the Faroe Island natives, of the gestures they made, and he has a plan.
He's like, oh yeah, the syrup and the lullaby.
He asks the army guys if they have ether bombs, because that's a thing the army just has, I guess. They don't, but Tako suggests they use the red fruit extract from Dr. Makioka, the guy from earlier, and put it into bombs, which apparently the doctor brought enough of this stuff back from the island, and they have time to put it into a gas form and put it in bombs. He sends the assistant guy from earlier to go get it, and he seems more concerned about not killing Kong than saving the woman, Mr. Tako does. Fumiko passes out.
Out of sheer fear.
They set up some drums and some speakers, and here's where Chekhov's drums pay off. Because Sakurai is going to play the drums. But they also apparently at some point made a recording of the Faroe Island natives singing, in which case they shouldn't actually need to play the drums too, because the drums should also be on that recording. But they set up some speakers and they start drumming and playing the lullaby that they sang to Kong earlier back on the island. And they fire these sleep bombs that they somehow have had time to assemble. And Kong breathes it in, and the whole ridiculous plan works. He sits...
Yeah, no one else gets sleepy or breathes it in or anything, but whatever.
He sits down on the building, and Fujita grabs Fumiko, and everybody can...
Who is actually a Barbie doll at this point. The editing bad there.
They all have a brief conference and decide to make the monsters fight again, because at this point they've headed off in different directions.
Round 2.
Kong will be a match now because of the electricity, and hopefully they'll destroy each other. Sakura has a plan, and here we have Chekhov's super thread, because the super fiber that we established earlier is now going to be used to airlift Kong. They're going to use the super rope and some balloons to lift Kong into the air.
Yeah, but with balloons, so it looks like it's his birthday.
This is one part of the movie that I remember from watching it as a kid. A lot of the details I did not remember, but I always remembered this lifting Kong up by balloons.
Yeah, it's hard not to. Yeah. I'm sure, especially when you're a kid.
Yeah.
Also, there's this music here, and I can't remember. I don't know what this music is called, but it's a very famous piece of music. But it goes something like dun 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 dun.
Oh yeah, that would be in the American version, though, right? You know what I'm saying? Is it in the Japanese version?
It's not in the Japanese version, but it is the piece of music that is right here is so similar.
The piece you're thinking of is in the Hall of the Mountain King from Peer Gynt. That it keeps building and building. Dun, 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 dun,
yeah, and then it's like wah, wah, wah,
yeah. Yeah, that's in the hall of the Mountain King, and yeah, it's been used in a lot of movies.
Yeah. Oh, it's so intense. Anyways, yes.
We get a very bad effect of the men climbing on Kong and hooking up the ropes and everything, and the helicopters pull Kong along. They lift him with balloons, but then they propel him forward by dragging him behind helicopters and take him to Mount Fuji, where Godzilla is already, I guess, or is heading towards. In the morning, they're almost there, but Kong starts to wake up and starts struggling when he sees Godzilla. So the copters cut the wires and drop Kong, and he slides down the mountain and slides straight into Godzilla. Then
they bowl him right into Godzilla.
And he gets up.
Let's go, round 2.
Kong steps on a few buildings and then runs and hides and grabs Godzilla's tail. And then Godzilla knocks him off, and Kong throws some rocks, and Godzilla tail smacks him on the back.
So what's the deal here is, why is Kong like immune to Godzilla's fire breath? I don't understand. Is it the electricity bullshit?
Apparently the electricity supercharged him so much that he's now immune to the atomic breath.
That's bullshit.
It is bullshit.
This pisses me off.
He seems surprised at first. He's like, "Oh no, I'm getting burned. Oh, I'm okay."
Yeah, he like looks at himself. He's like, "Oh, I'm not getting burned."
Yeah.
What? Get out of here.
So they do some wrestling, and there's a guy in the copter filming. Kong is winning, but trips and hits his head.
Yeah, he knocks himself out.
Yeah. And Godzilla starts kind of burying him and tail slapping him and doing his clicking flexing thing.
I'm sorry. Say it again. He's tail slapping him?
He's tail slapping him. He's doing a combination of burying him and tail slapping him. And also doing his flexing clicking.
That's so funny. Oh, I love it so much.
Kong gets up and Godzilla headbutts him and then jump kicks him. And Kong's down again.
Yeah, but when he gets up, it's the editing here is so bad. He just like gets up and all of a sudden is in front of him. And it doesn't even show how that happens.
Right.
It's just a horrible edit. And you're thinking Kong is down, he's getting buried, all this shit. And then all of a sudden he's just up and in front of him. Another thing that was just stupid and didn't make any fucking sense.
Oh, I should mention at this point that professional wrestling was quite popular in Japan at this time. So I think that's part of what is part of what is being satirized and referenced here. But because the American version plays it all so straight, this ends up looking more ridiculous in the American version, I think, than it does in the Japanese version.
I think in the Japanese version, it's so good. Like the pace is good. Everything about it is, I love it so much. It really like kept my attention. It wasn't too long, even though it really is a long monster fight because of the buildup and everything.
Yeah.
It's so good. It was everything that I wanted it to be, except for I was a little confused at some part, like how it ends.
Right. Kong goes down again, and Godzilla kicks some more rocks on him, and more tail slaps, and
He's like, "Stay down, you little bitch." Gives him more ass slaps.
Sets fire to the trees around him. A pilot spots lightning in the distance, and they're all like, "Good, it will make Kong 100 times stronger." I don't know what tests they've done to determine exactly how much stronger it will make Kong, but
this is another thing that just pissed me off because I'm like, bullshit. Yeah, they're like, the storm is going to awaken Kong's inner strength. And I'm like, bullshit. That's such bullshit. That's like just another like bullshit excuse that they're trying to like give Kong some like level up to be able to defeat Godzilla.
Yeah. Fujita compares it to Popeye's spinach.
Mm-hmm.
Although I don't know if that's in the lightning hits Kong and he jumps up and shocks Gojira, and Kong has an electric punch now, and the forest fire is growing. God. And Kong tries to stuff a tree down Godzilla's throat, and this will be referenced years later in Kong Skull Island when he shoves a tree down somebody's throat.
Oh,
I believe that's where he does it. He does it to one of the monsters on Kong Skull Island. But Godzilla sets the tree on fire, and Kong's fur starts smoking. And then Kong flips Godzilla, and they step on a bunch of more buildings. And we cut to cars on the road, and the soldier stops the cars. And it's Dr. Shiragawa and the government people.
The government people!
Kong and Godzilla's fight is heading towards Atami Spa. I think this must be a famous landmark. So they made they made a model of a famous building because they like to do that in these movies. Wreck something that we recognize. Guys in the copter are still watching and filming, and on the ground everybody's watching. G-Tail trips Kong, and more fighting, more fire, and they both tear up the famous pagoda, and they both fall off a cliff into the ocean. And there's an earthquake, and it's not clear if this is a coincidence or if it's caused by them falling.
Yeah.
And then one of the monsters is swimming away, but which? It's Kong. I don't know. How do we know it's Kong?
What?
And the helicopter follows and calls for instructions. So I guess the helicopter can see which one it is. And Dr. Siragawa says, let him go. He misses home. Which, yeah, you guys dragged him from his home to begin with. So yeah, don't kill the monster. Just let him go home. But Taco is sad because he's lost his publicity stunt.
But I'm like, wait, does this mean that Kong won?
I guess that's the idea we're going with. Somebody asks, is Godzilla alive?
But no one answers.
Right. And Dr. Siragawa says, we must learn from them how to adapt ourselves to our surroundings. That's all I can say. Which struck me as a kind of Forrest Gump kind of a line. All I have to say about that. Kong swims away, but then we hear Godzilla roar and then Kong roar. Although in the American version, I think they cut the roar. We don't hear Godzilla roar.
Yeah.
In the American version, then it's making it much more clear that Kong won because we don't hear Godzilla roar. But in this one, if Godzilla's still alive, then it's really just a draw and Kong's running away.
Yeah, like a little bitch.
Fuck you, Kong.
Fuck you, Kong. I mean, look, here's the thing is like, I like King Kong, like whatever. The story's stupid. I mean, I'm sure it gets better as time goes on, maybe like in the 90s or whatever. I don't know. But all I'm saying is I'm Team Godzilla 100%. And the things that they do to have to make Kong equal to be able to fight Godzilla doesn't make any goddamn sense.
Yeah.
It's stupid.
Yeah. Well, it's like when Batman fights Superman.
Yeah, because Batman has a utility.
Yeah, well, but if Batman has the chance to plan ahead and get some fucking kryptonite and relies on the fact that Superman's not going to just straight up kill him, then yeah, sure, Batman has a chance. But we all know that if Superman decided he wanted to kill Batman, then he would kill Batman. There's no contest.
Yeah.
It's only because of shenanigans that Batman's able to win. And yeah, you got to pull the same kind of shenanigans with Kong to make him equal.
Right. Dang. So, I mean, I was so pumped for this movie and so ready. And then I had no doubt in my mind. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, it's Godzilla. Godzilla has to win. And then at the end, I'm like, well, who the fuck won?
Now, remember, at this point in the Godzilla series, Godzilla is still basically a bad guy. He's going to become more of a good guy over time.
I love that he's kind of the bad guy.
Yeah, but he represents nuclear destruction, which, of course, Japan's not in favor of. And
yeah,
Kong was also, as I said, more popular at the time. So when you look at it that way, it kind of makes sense that Kong would win, but it's also in the Japanese version a little ambiguous about who actually won. And we will see a lot of this going forward because they want to be able to keep making more movies. So a lot of these fights kind of come to a draw.
Yeah.
Or Godzilla gets subdued but not destroyed because we want to be able to see him again.
Yeah. I'm really excited to get into like the 90s era because I remember those movies coming out. You know, Godzilla, I think there was a Godzilla in like, 92 or something like that? A remake?
Are you thinking of the American one?
Maybe so, yeah. Because I just remember like a movie coming out, like a Godzilla movie coming out and it being a really big deal to the people around me. I just
1998.
98, okay.
The 98 Godzilla is the American produced one by Roland Emmerich that stars Matthew Broderick. And Hank Azaria and Harry Shearer also in it. And it was a big, it was a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
It was kind of a little bit of a flop.
Aww.
It made its money. The critics did not care for it. The hardcore Godzilla fans did not like it. Had there been Twitter, there would have been a lot of hashtag not my Godzilla. But it was a big deal at the time. It was everywhere. They promoted the shit out of it. And then
gosh.
it was shortly after that, kind of in response to that movie, that Toho started making more Godzilla movies of their own, starting with Godzilla 2000, which actually came out in 99, I think. So it was a year later.
Hell yeah.
Yes, Godzilla 2000 came out in 1999, and it's the start of the Millennium series. So there's three, well now maybe four distinct eras in Godzilla films. Have we discussed this at all?
A little bit.
The Showa era and the Heisei era?
Very, very little.
These eras are named after, it's similar to how in the English world we have like the Elizabethan era and the Victorian era.
Right.
And Edwardian era. These eras are named for whoever was emperor at the time. And coincidentally, the Godzilla films have a clear break in that the first batch is during the Showa era, and then the return of Godzilla in 1984 is in the Heisei era, and it is a reboot of Godzilla. It's I believe, a sequel to the original, but it ignores all the other ones in between.
Damn.
And they did an American version with Raymond Burr in it.
Aw.
From 84 to 95, we get those. And then from 99 to 2004, we get what's called the Millennium era, because it starts with Godzilla 2000. And
Shout out.
again, Godzilla 2000 is a direct sequel to Godzilla and ignores everything that came before. And then they keep doing that. Godzilla vs. Megaguirus ignores Godzilla
Weird.
2000. Godzilla, Mothra, King Ghidorah, Giant Monsters All Out Attack ignores all the previous movies. So they do that for a while, and then we get the Reiwa era, which is 2016 to now, which includes Shin Godzilla and then some cartoon Godzillas. And then, of course, we have the three American movies, 2014, 19, and 21.
We did it.
So we are still very close to the beginning of the Showa era right now.
Heck yeah.
It seems like more, but this is only the third Godzilla movie. Because we've had all these other ones that are Toho movies but aren't Godzilla. Rodan and Mothra and Varan and all of that. But starting with the next one, all of that's going to get rolled in to Godzilla.
Yay!
So, Honeybee, what is your rating for this movie?
I am going to give it a 4.
Yeah.
I'm going to say 4.
I'm going to give it a 4 too. Part of that is nostalgia, because this, I'm not certain, but this might have been the first one I saw.
Little baby D.
It's the first one I clearly remember seeing.
Yeah.
I do remember seeing a commercial, a trailer. I remember being at the drive-in seeing something else, and there being a trailer for Godzilla vs. Megalon. And I wanted to see it, but did not. Didn't see it till for years later. That would have been in like 1973. But yeah,
Hell yeah.
I'm gonna give it a 4. I enjoyed it. I enjoy the Japanese version much more.
For sure.
From here on out, it's going to be Godzilla versus somebody else. Well, and in Godzilla Raids Again, he fights Anguirus, but the whole point of this movie is him fighting somebody else, and that's going to be the situation going forward.
Yeah.
Next week, we will be discussing Atragon,
Tune in next week.
which is available to watch free with ads on Vudu. It is also a Toho movie directed by Honda, and it's a little bit different.
It's a lot of bit different. I'm glad I went in blind.
But we'll get to all of that next week. So until then, remember to keep calm and take shelter in basements.
Don't misuse science.
We won't see you, but you will hear us next time on Monster Movie Fun Time Go. You've been listening to Monster Movie Fun Time Go. If you enjoyed the show, please rate and review us on your podcasting platform of choice. Our theme song is by the Texacato folk rock punk featuring Lita Lopez. You can support the show, find links to our social media, and even leave us a voice message at anchor.fm/MMFTG. What are my catchphrases? so
Till then, what are my catchphrases?
So
Line?
until then, line. So wait, stop! I gotta do it again.